Mabel's left wheelchair wheels sank into the slush. And Nora still would not let go of the bread. That was what made Jonah Mercer stop walking. Not the cold. Not the gray Montana street. Not the way people passed the narrow gap between the feed store and the closed cobbler's shop without looking in. Jonah had seen towns ignore things before. A man did not reach 61 years old on frontier roads without learning how carefully people could step around trouble. But the bread caught him. It was hardly bread at all. A heart heel of loaf. Dark at one edge. The sort of thing a bakery swept from a back shelf and forgot. Nora Bell held it with both hands as if it were silver. She was 7. Maybe 8. Though hunger and worry had made her face older than that. Her coat hung too large from her shoulders. One sleeve split near the elbow. The little girl in the wheelchair was smaller. 5. Perhaps. Her name, Jonah would learn soon, was May. A wet blanket covered her lap. And one hand gripped the bent wheel rim, while the chair leaned sideways in the frozen rut. Hold still. Nora whispered. I am holding still. May said. You are leaning. The chair is leaning. Nora planted one boot in the slush and pulled. The wheel groaned but did not rise. The bread slipped from under her arm and landed on May's damp blanket. Both girls froze. For one sharp second, Jonah saw real panic in Nora's eyes. She snatched the bread up, brushed off the snow with her sleeve, and broke it in half. Not quickly. Carefully. She measured the pieces the way a banker might weigh gold. Then she placed the larger half in May's lap. May looked down at it. That is bigger. No. It ain't. It is. You need more. You pushed me all morning. Nora's mouth tightened. Mama said equal. Mama also said not to lie. The words were soft. But they landed hard. Nora stared at the bread. After a moment, she tore a tiny corner from her own piece and tucked it onto May's half. Pretending May would not notice. May noticed. She pulled the same corner off and pressed it back into Nora's palm. Neither girl smiled. This was not a game. This was the serious arithmetic of children who had learned too much about not having enough. Jonah's horse shifted behind him. The sound made Nora turn. In the time it took most children to blink. She had stepped between Jonah and the wheelchair. One arm went back. Not touching May, but guarding the chair. Her chin lifted. We ain't bothering anybody, she said. Jonah stopped 10 feet away and kept his hands where she could see them. I can see that. We were just fixing the wheel. In a cold place. We don't mind cold. May looked at her sister. I mind it a little. Nora gave her a look. May looked back with calm honesty. Jonah crouched slowly. Not close enough to crowd them. His knees disliked the motion. But he ignored them. My name is Jonah Mercer, he said. I am passing through. Nora studied him. Passing through to where? West. Maybe. West is cold too. That is true. May leaned sideways to see him better. I'm May. This is Nora. We live here. Nora's face changed. Not here, she said quickly. Close. Jonah glanced at the wheelchair. The wet blanket. The bread in their hands. Your folks know where you are. May answered before Nora could stop her. Papa's gone. Mama's resting. She is sick. Nora said. Sharper than she meant to. How long? That ain't your business. No. Jonah said. It ain't. Wind moved through the alley. May shivered. And Nora reached back without looking to pull the blanket tighter around her sister's knees. There is a doctor in town. Jonah said. I saw his sign. Nora's face went flat in a way no child's face should. Dr. Venn does not come to us. Why not? Because we owe him. May looked at the bread in her lap. Mama coughs at night. Nora keeps water by her. Caleb keeps the door. Toby keeps the fire when we have wood. Nora whispered. May. But the truth was already out. Jonah stood slowly. I am going to the general store. He said. Broth. Flour. A blanket if they have one. Something for fever. Nora's eyes narrowed. Why? It was the right question. Jonah looked at the two halves of bread. Because I watched you both try to give away the bigger piece. He said. A family that does that has earned better than a frozen alley. Nora said nothing for a long moment. Then she pointed down the street. Old wheelwright shop on Tallow Lane. She said. Door sticks. You lift before you push. Jonah nodded. I will remember. The old wheelwright shop on Tallow Lane looked abandoned from the street. That, Jonah thought, was likely the point. The front window had been boarded with mismatched planks. Snow gathered on the sill in dirty ridges. A faded sign still hung above the door. Its painted wagon wheel cracked down the middle. No smoke rose from the front chimney. But when Jonah stepped close, he caught the thin smell of wood fire coming from somewhere deeper inside. He set one hand on the door. It did not move. He remembered Nora's words. Lift before you push. The door scraped upward half an inch. Then gave with a tired groan. A boy appeared out of the dimness before Jonah had both boots inside. 13. Maybe. Dark hair. Hard eyes. Too thin through the face. But standing with his feet planted like a man guarding a bank vault instead of a freezing shop. Who are you? Jonah Mercer. Jonah said. Nora told me the door sticks. The boy's hand stayed near his side. Not raised. Not threatening. Ready. Nora tells too much. From the back of the shop, Nora's voice came sharp. Caleb. Let him in. Caleb Bell did not move for another breath. Then he stepped aside. Just enough. Jonah entered carrying broth. Flour. Tinned meat. Fever powder. And a wool blanket rolled under one arm. He made himself look slowly around. Not sharply. Children watched faces. A man who reacted too fast taught them fear before he spoke a word. The shop smelled of cold iron. Damp boards. Old grease. And sickness. Against the far wall, a woman lay on folded blankets near a little iron stove. She could not have been much past 30. But illness had taken the shape out of her face and left only the effort of staying. Her breathing came rough and uneven. A boy about 10 sat beside her, holding her hand in both of his. That is Toby. Nora said from beside May's wheelchair. And that is Mama. Miriam Bell. Caleb said. As if reminding the room she had a full name. Jonah nodded once. Miriam Bell. He repeated. Something in Caleb's jaw loosened. Barely. Jonah crossed the room and crouched near the woman, leaving space between them until Nora moved closer. He did not touch Miriam. He held the back of his hand near her cheek and felt the heat before he reached her skin. Fever. Too much of it. How long has she been breathing like this? Nora's eyes flicked to Caleb. Worse since yesterday. Caleb said. Bad before that. 6 weeks. May said. Nora closed her eyes. Jonah did not scold the truth for arriving early. He opened the blanket and wrapped it around May first. The little girl went still when the warmth settled over her shoulders. Her fingers touched the wool like she was afraid it might be borrowed from a dream. For Mama, May said. I brought more than one kind of help. Jonah said. He handed the small pot to Caleb. Can you build that back fire higher? Caleb looked at the pot. Then at Jonah. Why? Broth. Steam. Warm water. Fever powder will do more good if she has something in her stomach. You a doctor? No. Then, how do you know? Jonah looked at Miriam's thin hand lying in Toby's. I sat beside pneumonia before. The room quieted. I cannot promise she will come through. He said. I do not make promises about things I do not control. But she has a better chance with broth and heat than without them. That answer seemed to matter more than comfort would have. Caleb took the pot and went to the back room. Toby looked up for the first time. His eyes were red. But dry. What do I do? Keep water near the fire. Jonah said. Not boiling over. Just steady. Can you do that? Toby nodded as if Jonah had handed him a badge. I can. Nora took the cup when the broth was ready. She knelt beside her mother and slipped one arm under Miriam's shoulders with the careful skill of someone who had practiced too often. Just a little. Mama. She whispered. That's right. Just a little. Miriam swallowed once. Then again. May watched from her chair. Wrapped in Jonah's blanket. Her face solemn and patient. Lata. After the fire had taken properly and each child had eaten more than they admitted needing, Jonah sat with his back against the wall near the door. Nora came and sat several feet away. Not close. But not across the room. People saw us. She said quietly. All winter. They saw. Jonah looked at the stove. I expect they did. Some helped at first. What changed? Nora pulled her knees under the oversized coat. Mr. Locke. The name made Caleb look up from the back room. Bramwell Locke. Jonah asked. Nora nodded. He says our land was not ours. Says Papa owed money. Says there are papers. And your Papa? He said the land was ours. Nora whispered. He told me once. Before he died. He said. Nora. That land is yours. Jonah went very still. Did he say where the papers were? Nora shook her head. He died before he could. What happened to him? Caleb answered from the shadows. Work accident. Nora's eyes stayed on Jonah. That is what they say. She said. Jonah heard the difference. What do you say? Nora's small hands tightened around her coat. I say Papa checked everything twice. The stove cracked softly. Jonah looked at the door. Then at Miriam. Then at the 4 children holding up a family with hands too small for the weight. All right. He said. Nora looked at him. All right what? All right? Jonah said. Tomorrow I find out what your father checked. Jonah Mercer was still there when morning came. Caleb noticed first. He had slept sitting up near the front door. One shoulder against the wall, and one hand wrapped around the handle of a dull little knife. When pale light pushed through the cracks in the boarded window, his eyes opened at once. Jonah was in the back room. Building the fire higher. Caleb stood in the doorway and watched him for a long moment. You stayed. The boy said. Jonah set another split board into the stove. Said I would. Men say things. They do. Caleb waited. As if there ought to be more. Jonah gave him nothing dressed up. No speech. No promise polished for a child. Just the fire. The water pot. And the fact of him still being there. From the main room. Nora's voice came low and steady. Mama. Just one sip. Come on now. Just one. Miriam Bell's throat moved once. Nora smiled tiredly. Good. That's good. Caleb looked toward his sister. And something raw crossed his face before he hid it. She does that every morning. He said. Every night. Too. She should not have to. Caleb's jaw tightened. No. Jonah let the word sit. Then he said, "Your father's coat. Do you still have it?" The boy went still. Not afraid. Not angry. Grief still. Why? Nora told me he said the land was yours. She said he kept papers safe. But died before he could tell her where. Caleb stared at the fire. For a moment. Jonah thought the boy would refuse. Then, Caleb nodded toward the far corner. Under the horse blanket. Brown coat. Jonah crossed the room slowly and lifted the folded coat as if picking up something living. It was heavy wool. Worn shiny at the elbows. One button missing. He ran his fingers along the hem. The collar. The inside lining. Near the left side seam. The fabric thickened. Someone had sewn it back in a hurry. Nora appeared behind Caleb. Silent as a shadow. Jonah looked at them both. "May I?" Caleb pulled the knife from his boot and handed it over handle first. Jonah opened the seam carefully. Paper weighted inside. Several folded sheets. Pressed flat by months of hiding. May rolled closer from the main room. Wrapped in the wool blanket. Is it treasure? Nora did not look away from Jonah's hands. No. Jonah unfolded the papers on his knee and read slowly. Once. Then again. When he finally lifted his eyes, the children were barely breathing. "These are deeds," he said. "Your father's land. The east pasture. The mineral rights beneath both." Caleb's voice came rough. "Mineral rights. What is under the ground?" Jonah said. "Oil shale. Most likely. There was a survey done in this county last year." Nora's small face did not change much. But her eyes sharpened. "That is why Mr. Locke wants it." "Yes. That is why Papa died." The room went quiet. Jonah could have softened it. Many adults would have. Maybe because they thought children needed soft lies. Maybe because they needed them. But Nora Bell had been carrying the shape of the truth alone for months. Jonah would not make her carry a lie too. "That may be why," he said. "These papers do not prove how he died. But they prove what someone wanted." Caleb turned away fast. His shoulders went rigid. Jonah looked down at the papers and gave the boy the privacy of not being watched. After a moment, Caleb faced them again. "What now?" "Now I go to the courthouse." "I'm coming." "No." Caleb stepped forward. "Those are my father's papers. And this is your mother's room." Jonah said, "That door does not open while I am gone. Not for Locke's men. Not for the sheriff. Not for anyone except me or Mercy Vale. If she comes." "Who is Mercy Vale?" May asked. Nora answered. "She used to teach school. She brought soup once. Then stopped." Caleb said. Jonah folded the deeds and tucked them inside his coat. Sometimes scared people stop doing right. Sometimes they need a reason to start again. The courthouse sat at the north end of Graybarrow. Square and sandstone. Pretending to be sturdier than the men inside it. Hollis Wren, the county clerk, had thin hands and eyes that avoided trouble until trouble paid a filing fee. Jonah asked for the Bell property records. Hollis hesitated. Jonah placed money on the desk. The records came out. Within an hour. Jonah had enough to understand the shape of the trap. A debt claim filed after Elias Bell's death by a bank that seemed to exist mostly on paper. A mineral survey tied to Bramwell Locke through 2 shell companies. A work order from the site where Elias had died. Stamped complete. At the bottom was a note in different handwriting. Supplemental file removed by request. Who requested it? Jonah asked. Hollis straightened papers that did not need straightening. The sheriff's office carried the order. Carried it for whom? Hollis did not look up. Jasper Crow. Mr. Locke's attorney. Jonah stood outside. A man in a good coat fell into step beside him. Mr. Locke would like a word. Jonah kept walking. I am poor company. The Bell family is in a hard position. Mr. Locke can arrange a settlement. Where does May go? The man blinked. The little one. The little one in the chair. Where does she go in your settlement? The man had no answer ready. That told Jonah enough. He walked away with the deeds against his chest and the cold at his back. By noon, he was knocking on Mercy Vale's door. Mercy Vale opened the door before Jonah knocked a second time. She had the look of a woman who had been expecting trouble for months and hated herself for being relieved when it finally chose a shape. You found them, she said. I found enough to know why people stopped helping. Her face tightened. Jonah did not soften it. Bramwell Locke wants the Bell land. Their father had the deeds sewn into his coat. Mineral rights included. The debt claim is rotten. The courthouse record has been touched. And Locke's attorney had files removed through the sheriff's office. Mercy's hand closed around the doorframe. Nora told you my name. She said you were good. That hurt her more than accusation would have. Mercy looked down at the step. I was scared. I know. My husband works at Locke's mill. I know that too. She looked up then. What do you need? A witness. Someone who saw what happened to Elias Bell. Mercy went very still. There is a man named Jonas Harker, she said. He worked that platform. He has not been sober more than a day since Elias died. Will he talk to you? Mercy reached for her shawl. He will tonight. Jonah returned to the wheelwright shop just as darkness thickened over Grayborough. 2 horses stood near the front door. Not tied. Waiting. He cut behind the blacksmith shed and entered through the back. Caleb turned so fast the knife in his hand caught the firelight. It's me, Jonah said. The boy lowered it by 1 inch. Not 2. They're out front. I know. Nora stood behind May's wheelchair. Both hands locked on the handles. Toby was beside Miriam, watching her breathing as if he could keep it steady by will alone. A hard knock struck the front door. Bell family. A man called. Open up. We have legal business. Jonah crossed to the door but did not open it. There is a sick woman in this building, he said. You want legal business. You come back in daylight with papers I can read. Ah, pause. Then the voice changed. Less polite. Mr. Locke wants this settled. Tell Mr. Locke what Elias Bell sewed into his coat is no longer in that coat. Silence followed. Then Boots moved away from the door. Caleb stared at Jonah. Why tell them? So they worry about the papers instead of looking at the children. Nora's face went pale. But she understood. Later that night, Miriam's breathing worsened. Jonah heard the change before anyone spoke. Nora was already kneeling beside her mother, cup in hand, whispering, Mama, stay with us. Just a little. Toby looked at Jonah with wide eyes. Is she? She needs a doctor now. Dr. Venn won't come. Caleb said. He will. Jonah walked through snow to the doctor's office and knocked until a lamp appeared upstairs. Dr. Silas Venn opened the lower door in a coat pulled crooked over his nightshirt. This had better be urgent. It is Anna. Miriam Bell. The doctor's face closed. I have already attended that family. 6 weeks ago. She is still alive. Which means those children have done more doctoring than you have. Venn stiffened. Jonah took coins from his coat. Double your rate. Tonight. The doctor hesitated 1 second too long. Then reached for his bag. At the shop. Venn examined Miriam in silence. His face changed as he worked. Not enough for the children to trust him, but enough for Jonah to see shame finding a place to stand. She needs steam, Ven said. Water kept hot through the night. More fever powder. Broth if she can swallow. I'll keep the water, Toby said at once. Ven looked at the boy. Then nodded. Then listened carefully. While Toby worked, Jonah crouched beside the doctor. Elias Bell's death certificate, he said quietly. Was it true? Ven's hand slowed. The injuries were not consistent with what I wrote, he said. Who told you what to write? The doctor looked toward Nora, who sat holding her mother's hand. Jasper Crow, he whispered. Locke held the mortgage on my office. Before Jonah could answer, May lifted her head. Someone's outside again. This time, the knock carried a badge behind it. Jonah Mercer. Called Sheriff Amos Creed. I have a court order to vacate this property. Jonah took the deeds from his coat and crossed to May. Can you hold something where no one will think to look? May's small hands opened. Try me, she said. Jonah tucked the folded papers beneath her blanket. Then he faced the door. Sheriff Amos Creed did not force the door that night. Dr. Ven saw to that. This woman cannot be moved. The doctor called through the wood. If you take her into that cold, you carry the responsibility for what follows. Outside, the silence changed. Jonah could hear Bramwell Locke there. Though the man had not yet spoken, power had a sound. It made other men wait before they breathed. Then Locke's voice came smooth through the door. Doctor, I advise you to remember who holds your note. Dr. Ven looked at Miriam Bell. Then at Nora's small hand wrapped around her mother's fingers. I remember, he said. Louder now. That is why I am speaking plainly tonight. The sheriff swore under his breath. We come back at daylight. Creed called. With the order. Jonah stood beside the door until the hoofbeats left the street. Only then did May let out the breath she had been holding. Did I hide them good? She whispered. Jonah looked at the folded deeds tucked beneath her blanket. Better than any safe in town. Before dawn, Mercyvale came through the back door with snow on her hem and a man behind her who looked as if sleep and peace had both abandoned him months ago. Jonas Harker removed his hat with both hands. I saw it, he said before anyone asked. I saw what happened to Elias Bell. Caleb stood slowly from beside the stove. Harker could not look at him. I called it an accident because Locke's men told me my boys would suffer if I remembered different. His voice shook. But it did not stop. I took money after. Not much. Enough to hate myself and not enough to undo it. Nora looked at him with no expression at all. That was worse than anger. Mercy laid paper on an overturned crate. Dr. Ven wrote his own correction by lamplight. Harker signed his statement with a hand that trembled so badly, Mercy had to hold the page flat. Jonah made 3 packets. One goes to the count seat, he said. One stays with Mercy. One stays hidden. May patted her blanket once. I know my job. Mercy sent Will Fenner, a mill boy with a fast horse and a long memory for Locke's cruelty. Riding south before sunrise. He carried the packet under his coat with orders to put it in Judge Asa Merrow's hands and no one else's. At 6. Jonah walked into the Graybarrow Hotel dining room. The room smelled of coffee, ham, and men who had never wondered whether breakfast would come. Orrin Pike sat near the window. 2 mill foremen shared a table with the bank clerk. A cattle buyer looked up from his plate. Jonah stood in the center of the room. My name is Jonah Mercer, he said. I have been in this town 3 days. In that time, I have found a sick woman hidden in a wheelwright shop. 4 children keeping her alive. Property deeds sewn into a dead man's coat. A false debt claim. A missing courthouse file. And a witness who says Elias Bell did not die the way this town was told. Forks stopped moving. Orrin Pike went pale. You have proof? The bank clerk asked. Enough that a judge is reading it by noon. No one spoke. Jonah looked around the warm room. Bramwell Locke is coming for that family this morning. You can call it legal business and finish your coffee. Or you can stand in the street and make him do it where God and Graybarrow can see. By 8. The street outside the wheelwright shop was full. Not cheering. Not brave all at once. Just present. Locke arrived with Sheriff Creed and 2 men in good coats. He smiled when he saw the crowd. But the smile did not reach his eyes. This is a private legal matter, he said. No. Mercy Vale answered from the porch. It stopped being private when children started eating in alleys. Harker stepped forward next. His face was gray. But his voice carried. I saw Elias Bell pushed from that platform. The street went still. Dr. Venn came out behind him. And I wrote a false certificate under pressure. He said. I will correct it under oath. Sheriff Creed looked at Locke. Then he folded the court order once and put it in his coat. I will not move that family today, he said. For the first time since Jonah had entered Graybarrow. Bramwell Locke had no room left to hide inside the law. Judge Asa Merrow reached Graybarrow 11 days later. By then, Miriam Bell had opened her eyes twice, swallowed broth without Nora coaxing every sip, and asked for water in her own voice. It was not recovery yet. No one in the wheelwright shop pretended it was. But it was a step back toward the living. And in that room, a step was enough to make everyone breathe differently. The judge arrived in a black carriage with 2 territorial deputies and a clerk who carried a leather case full of paper. He did not make speeches in the street. He went first to the courthouse. Then to the wheelwright shop. Then to Mercy Vale's front room, where every document was laid across her table in careful rows. The deeds. The mineral survey. The false debt claim. Dr. Venn's corrected statement. Jonas Harker's signed account. Hollis Wren's record of the missing supplemental file. By sunset, Bramwell Locke was taken from his office above the mill. He did not shout. Men like Locke rarely did when a room finally turned against them. He only adjusted his coat and said this would all be corrected by proper authority. Judge Merrow answered. That is why I am here. The false debt against the Bell property was voided before the week ended. The mineral rights were placed under court protection until Miriam was strong enough to manage the estate herself. Every claim Locke or his companies had filed against the Bell land was frozen for review. That mattered. Justice without protection was only a door left open for the next thief. Sheriff Creed was suspended pending inquiry. He was not treated as a hero for refusing one order too late. He had to testify under oath about the removed records and every instruction he had taken from Locke's attorney. Dr. Venn kept his office. But not his comfort. Judge Merrow ordered his corrected certificate attached to the official record. For 1 year. Every Friday morning. He was to treat families who could not pay, and record those visits publicly at the courthouse. Jonas Harker testified too. His hands shook when he signed the final statement. But he signed it. No one cheered. Jonah was glad. Cheering would have made it too easy. Graybarrow had not been saved by one brave morning. It had been exposed by it. Miriam was moved back to the Bell house 3 weeks later. Not because the town decided she deserved it, but because the papers proved she had never lost the right. The first night home, Nora stood in the doorway of her old room and did not enter. Her mother saw. Nora. Miriam whispered from the bed. Nora turned at once. Do you need water? No. Miriam's hand lifted slightly. Did you sleep? That was all. Nora's face broke in silence. She crossed the room and pressed her cheek against her mother's hand. And for once, nobody asked her to be strong. The next morning, Caleb found Nora asleep at the kitchen table with her cheek on an open schoolbook. No cup in her hand. No blanket to mend. No fire to guard. He started to wake her. Miriam stopped him from the doorway. "Let her be little," she said. So they did. The town paid what it owed in pieces. Orrin Pike sent flour, salt, coffee, and coal through the end of winter. He tried to call it charity once. Caleb Bell looked him straight in the eye until Orrin changed the word to repayment. Mercyvale reopened lessons in the wheelwright shop until spring. The first thing she taught the children was how to read a deed, a debt note, and a wage contract. Caleb sat in the back row the first day, arms crossed, pretending he was only there for Toby. By the end of the week, he was reading faster than anyone. Toby kept the stove warm during lessons because he said he already knew how to keep water steady and a stove was not much different. May got the best repair of all. Jonah found a sound wheel in the back of the shop, sanded the rim, tightened the spokes, and worked until it turned without groaning. Pay tested it by rolling from one side of the room to the other, then back again. Her face serious as a judge. "It does not lean," she said. "No," Jonah said. "It does not." The old bent wheel was not thrown away. Mercy hung it on the schoolroom wall. Beneath it, she painted, "Do not step around what you are able to help." Then Jonah built a locked wooden box and set it beneath that sign. He called it the record box. Any family in Graybarrow could place a copy of a deed, wage agreement, debt receipt, or letter of claim inside it. Mercy kept one key. Hollis Wren kept another at the courthouse. Jonah kept the third. It was not grand. It was not poetic. It was a box, but for families whose lives could be stolen by missing paper. A box was no small thing. Mercy added one more ledger beside it. The winter watch list. Not for gossip. Not for shame. For qual. Medicina. Flour. And visits. Every Sunday after church. 2 names were checked by someone who had agreed to go in person. Knock on a door. And see with their own eyes. Because Graybarrow had learned that looking away was not the same as minding your business. Years later, people in Graybarrow would say Jonah Mercer saved the Bell family. Jonah corrected them every time. Nora held the house together with a piece of bread. He would say, "May hid the deeds better than any banker." Caleb kept the door. Toby kept the water hot. Miriam kept breathing. Elias Bell kept the truth sewn into his coat. I only stopped walking one evening, long after the snow had gone, and the road west had dried under spring wind. Nora found Jonah sitting on the Bell porch. "Are you leaving?" she asked. Jonah looked toward the open road. For a long while, he said nothing. Then he looked back at the schoolroom window, where the old wheelchair wheel hung in the fading light. "No," he said. "I have walked enough. Now I think I will learn how to stay." This is a fictional story created for educational and entertainment purposes. All characters, events, places, and situations are imaginary. Any resemblance to real people, living or dead, or real events is purely coincidental.